I think it's been long enough since Final Fantasy X that if Final Fantasy 17 were to come out and be old school and be turn-based and be that kind of JRPG, it kind of would be a new direction for Final Fantasy. So, I'm not going to lie to you guys, talking about Final Fantasy has kind of gotten to a point where it's not very fun anymore. So, a lot of people will know Square Enix had its yearly financial reports made public very recently, and I actually prepared to make this video quite a while ago, soon after finishing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, because I'd seen so much of this vitriol since, well, for years now, realistically. It seems like every time a Final Fantasy game comes around, the first thing you see about it is disdain. But I decided against it, because I wanted to take the road of, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. But seeing how it's just escalating further and further for literal years now, I've come to realise that while I do question some of Square's decisions with these games personally, like those of you who've seen me talk about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth know I have some things to say about it, but I decided against it, and I was preparing a video about Kingdom Hearts Missing Link before realising I actually wasn't able to do that, which, to be honest with you, is probably just as well. I've never outright wanted Square Enix to do badly, and the media and really what gets me is the fan base seems to want that to happen. So my ire isn't aimed at Square Enix at all. It's aimed at this weird obsession with their downfall. And trust me, I understand completely that the irony that I am bitching about people bitching on the internet, it's not lost on me. But it's gotten to a point now where, like, every Reddit thread, every tweet, every YouTube video that I've seen has actively warded me away, not only from creating content about my favourite franchise, but even looking for content about my favourite franchise, because it's just so full of doom. I understand that, you know, once somebody finishes a single player, story-driven experience, there might be some conversation to have after everybody's finished, but because people finish them at such different paces, and because those who finish them quickly tend to move on so fast, which I totally get and understand, it's actually gotten really hard to talk about the games themselves without scrutiny, because you finished it too quickly, so people won't watch anything you make or want to have a conversation with you about anything to do with the game because they haven't got there yet. But by the time those people have got it, those first people, or that first wave of people who finished the game, have moved on to something else and they're not interested in talking about it anymore. It's this really weird thing. So if people have no good time to create conversations about the games themselves, it seems to have led people into talking about the game's sales and its performance in the wide world. And I don't know, there's something weird to me about that. Which brings me, of course, to this weird sensation of tribalism that has taken hold of the gaming community. Well, actually, no, every product-based community, actually. And realistically, like, this tribalism has been around for generations. Like, you know, Sega versus Nintendo was a thing back when I was a kid. But it seems like people are so taken by the sales figures of games they play as well as games they don't, and using that figure as a conduit to serve their subjective opinions. And in some cases, I've seen, like, loads of people just making stuff up to just try and have facts that go along with their narrative to go, well, this is bad because, or this is good because. And to me, this is wild. Now, to some extent, I do get it. Like, I understand that people may take an interest in the success of a product that they love, but as far as I'm concerned, it's only so far as to be able to discern or hope that more of the product that you're investing in might be made as a result of that success. But when every single comment section I look at, even remotely related to Final Fantasy, boils down to, see, Final Fantasy 16 didn't do well, it sucks, and, you know, Square Enix doesn't know what they're doing. Final Fantasy 7 didn't meet expectations either. Clearly, they just don't know what they're doing. It's exhausting. It's gotten so crazy. So, when did it stop being okay to just like something? Or not like it? You know, when did it become normal to make the trajectory of a product that you like or don't like an extension of your personality? Now, of course, this then brings up the idea of the vocal minority. You know, there probably are loads of people who don't go out of their way to go to crazy lengths to talk to game developers like a piece of crap. You know, remember my FF7 shipping video, for example. But let's face facts, in a world of social media, influencers, and, you know, regular common outlets, that's not an interesting headline now, is it? Sensationalism is the real hotness nowadays, and everyone has something to say, which is totally fine. But the narrative around Square Enix, in particular in the games industry, seems particularly odd. I don't know about you, but I feel that the media has a weird hate boner against Square Enix specifically. So let me pose you a question, particularly if you take an interest in a wide array of games, as opposed to just Square Enix games. What other companies have you seen such widespread coverage on their profits on specific products? Now, maybe this is a symptom of my life as a content creator revolving around Final Fantasy in particular, but I'm a big fan of a lot of games. And while I probably could tell you roughly how many copies Monster Hunter Rise sold, I've certainly never seen it used as a weaponized fact for or against Capcom. So many media outlets, whether it be your IGN, your Eurogamers, your VG247, your Games Radars, Reddit, obviously, Twitter, there just seems to be this overwhelming want for clicks based on the performance of Square Enix as a company. And I find that extremely bizarre because, quite frankly, as far as I'm concerned, like, a business's sales figures are none of my business. And I say that this has dated back for a while because I'm going to use this example, which was on the BBC of all places. The headline is inherently negative. Final Fantasy XVI producers on trying to regain fans' trust. That is not a positive way to lead into the release of a new game. The idea that fans have stopped caring about Final Fantasy for such a long period of time that Final Fantasy 16 has to win everybody back. That, like, sure, I understand that some people did feel alienated by 14, 15, 13, 12, like, since 10, realistically. But they've always been trying to sort of change things up. So why Final Fantasy 16 in particular got this level of ire before the game had even released, because this was released on the 22nd of June 2023, I have no idea. Like, and there were tons of articles like this about FF16 being shot in the foot before it had even left the gate. And again, I understand it. It's an action game. It's not what a lot of Final Fantasy fans expected. But it still did well enough, and it's still, there are a lot of people out there in the world that love it. So I don't understand where this negativity stems from. And of course, this extends beyond the pre-release of Final Fantasy XVI and into Final Fantasy VII Rebirth as well. Square Enix FF16 let sales lead to stock price and profit decline. FF16 sales did not meet high expectations. Blames the slow adoption of the PS5, which, to be fair, I do think that their now approach of going multi-platform is only a positive thing. There are good reasons why Final Fantasy XVI didn't sell as much as Final Fantasy XV. It sold well, but not enough to patch up Square Enix's profits. Like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth sale dropped 90% in Japan. It's like there's this obsession with Square Enix doing badly. IGN saying it's like an amazing game, but it's not good enough and things like that. It's like, I understand that maybe the higher ups of Square Enix have very high expectations for their games, and they have done since the PS1 days. But never have I seen as much scrutiny towards Square as I have against any other developer. Certainly not Japanese developers. I've never seen Nintendo be scrutinized this much, unless you're talking about emulators. This then creates this weird feedback loop where looking at social media or anything of that like then creates this further narrative that Final Fantasy is a relic of the past, that it has lost what it is, it's lost loads of fans, and that it needs to go back to its roots in order to go back, like, get those fans back. And uses examples like Yakuza, Persona, Dragon Quest as examples of JRPG franchises that are doing better, which sell just as well as Final Fantasy, certainly not magnitudes beyond what Final Fantasy is selling. So where is this narrative coming from? So what I'm basically saying is that the grand general public seems to have taken an interest into the inner workings of video game companies when realistically their attachment to that company is just enjoying the products that they make. Now, I'm not saying that nobody is affected by the goings on of restructuring that Square Enix has purportedly taken, because, you know, if you look here where layoffs have become a big part of the restructuring, that's awful. That's not nice to hear. And as somebody who has once worked for Square Enix and has been in the games industry, that's a scary thing for a lot of people. And I think those people absolutely have every right to be invested in what's going on. But what I don't understand is the number of people who are jumping out of their own lane to then provide commentary on an industry that many people likely don't know anything about because they've never seen it from the other side, and B, you know, your investment in this discussion is largely going to extend to, is Final Fantasy 17 going to come out? When the answer is obviously yes. I think a lot of this plays into sort of basically late stage capitalism, I suppose, because if you look at Square Enix and what they're saying here about they have cancelled $140 million worth of games earlier in the year as it looks to be more selective, which was again a recent article that had come out, this one from Games Radar. The approach that they are taking to supposedly cut off a lot of their AA titles in favor of AAA titles suggests that there are certain franchises that I'm really fond of that maybe won't do very, like maybe won't come out anymore. Stuff like Bravely Default or Octopath Traveler, because if we saw anything from the Hi-Fi Rush studio being axed, then, you know, that could happen. That could happen. But I think that what I mean by late stage capitalism is, like, if they never make a Bravely Default game again, I still love the original Bravely Default enough that I can happily go back and play it, and I don't necessarily need to have another copy. If one came about, yeah, I'd be really excited about it. If it never happened again, sure, like I might feel something about it, but I'm not so invested into what's going on with the company at large to make assumptions that a Bravely Default game is going to get made or not, because again, it's none of my business. Now, I would like to take this moment to say that this whole video is not to say that I agree with every single move that Square Enix does before people go and call me an apologist or something, because apparently not taking a dump on something immediately makes you the opposite. All I'm saying is I have my feelings towards sort of recent Final Fantasies and older Final Fantasies, and yeah, I definitely do prefer the older style, and I think it's been long enough since Final Fantasy X that if Final Fantasy 17 were to come out and be old school and be turn-based and be that kind of JRPG, it kind of would be a new direction for Final Fantasy. But all I'm saying is that it's just got to a point now where having a discussion that revolves around Final Fantasy, whether you're a fan or not, certainly in my experience, and it's part of the reason I've not been making videos as much about this, because it's just gotten exhausting, because every conversation seems to devolve into, well, it's because money, like the money that Square Enix is earning. I'm like, I don't actually care. Like, without being rude, I don't actually care about how much money Square Enix is making from these things. I just want to talk about a game that I like, and it be a conversation that's maybe a bit surface level for some people, and maybe this comes off as a little combative towards people who want to look deeper, but I just don't want every conversation that I have about just a game that I like to devolve into, like, just taking a dump on a company. In my opinion, a lot of people who are having this large-scale negativity towards these games, and again, everyone is entitled to their opinion, it's fine. It's also very difficult to not see the internet as a singular voice that's self-contradictory, when in fact it's lots of different people talking at the same time, which creates a bit of a cacophony. But those people who are just negative towards things a lot, I believe that they do so thinking that it will cause things to change. And in some cases that can happen. Take a look at what happened with Sony and Helldivers recently. If, you know, the voices get loud enough, then things are forced to change. But in a lot of situations, you don't change things in a way that you necessarily want them to change. What tends to happen is they just don't happen at all. And if people want companies to succeed, or like games that they want to come out under licenses they enjoy, etc., you kind of just have to wait and see what will happen. You can have your opinion, and that's absolutely fine. But the level it's gotten to with Final Fantasy in particular is just a little out of proportion. Ultimately, the way I see it, if the games haven't met up to expectations, they're taking steps to kind of move in a different direction. And I think that level of transparency is good. And I think that being able to share our thoughts on that direction is also good. I would just not take Final Fantasy VII Rebirth didn't sell as well as Remake, which, duh, honestly, that sounds like a ridiculous that sounds like a ridiculous criticism to me, because it's a sequel to a game that's a remake of a game that's a long game, and you do, no matter what anyone says, you do kind of have to have finished the first one to play the second one. So of course it didn't sell as well as Remake did. That's a crazy criticism to make. Anyway, I digress. I think using sales figures as a weaponizing fact to then go, well, see, this is why this game sucks. It's like, no, games are subjective. If you are of any kind of person that argues that games are art, art is subjective. There is no one thing that is superior to another. We all just have our opinions. And using a numerical fact like sales to turn around and go, this is why I'm right and you're wrong, is just stupid. Just stop it. Anyways, I'm going to leave the video there because I think I've said what I wanted to say, and I'm sure I'm going to get flamed in the comments like crazy for this because I'm stoking the flames of the internet, and that's bound to happen. But do you know what? This is why I haven't been making videos as much recently, because it feels like every time I talk about a franchise that I really love, it just like comes back at me with a bunch of negativity that quite honestly I don't want. So that's going to be it for this video, and do feel free to comment below, and if you want to ask me anything about this specifically, then come find me on my Discord or on Twitch. It's all linked down below. I just wanted to get my feelings about this out because it is frustrating to me, and I kind of just want to go back to a stage where we can be not blissfully ignorant of everything in the video game industry, because I do think a lot of what's going on in the games industry is buggered, like, quite frankly, and all of these layoffs and restructures and everything are impacting people's lives, and that's important. But I think as consumers, a little bit, we could stay in our lane a little more, or at least I would like to. So if you want to have a conversation with me about it, find me over on Twitch or Discord, and I'm happy to have that discussion with you. Anyways, that's going to be it from me. Massive thank you to everyone who supports me over on my Patreon, and if you would like to join in with that, there are links in the description box for that as well down below. And if you wanted to like the video and subscribe to the channel, then obviously that would be amazing as well. If you want to follow any other coverage that I'm doing for Final Fantasy or any other games that I might be playing, or you just want to tell me that I'm an idiot and you want to tell me I'm an idiot on future videos, give it to me. Love the engagement. God, this plays into the whole sensationalism thing again, doesn't it? Anyways, I'm going to stop before I talk myself into a hole. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Take care.